to get you to step just a little bit just out of this. That's perfect. I just wanted to get out of that light right there. Okay. Action.
Well, one of the things that I did remember was the fact that they, after their mother died, they were split up, and I know that Aunt Rosa was taken by one family, and my grandmother, Josephine, was taken by another family. And I know that for a while that Aunt Rosa wasn't treated very nicely, from what I was told by my grandmother, which was one of the reasons why a lot of times I'd ask my grandmother why sometimes she seemed so mean, or she didn't seem to smile much, but there were other times I did hear her laugh, and a lot of things that you would normally hear. The two sisters would talk, my grandmother and Aunt Rosa, and I didn't really understand all the dynamics of their relationship and all the things that happened between them, because a lot of things they never talked about. It was like when you try to ask about different parts of their lives, it was like pulling teeth. I do know that there were a certain amount of kids. We never met all of them, but we did hear a lot about their interactions for a while, but they never really talked about their childhood. I do know that, like, my grandmother talked about one piece of jewelry that she wanted that after her mother died, that her father took and gave to his girlfriend or his new wife or something like that she wanted, but didn't really hear much about all of the things that happened. And the other side of my family, my mother's side, there were a lot of information went around, and we talked about a lot of things. And I just wanted to find out more about my grandmother's side and all the things that they wanted to, you normally hear about your family, because as a child you're always asking those questions. And a lot of that information never really got passed around. They were very secretive about it. And I remember my Uncle Nat but I don't remember I cannot remember seeing him a lot for some reason. Now it kind of gets to me. It's like, why don't I remember? And I just remember them living together when we first got back to New York in the early 60s, or late 60s, 69, 68, 60, 67, I think we got back to New York. And my grandmother was living with Aunt Rosa, and they seemed to have a nice relationship. But we stayed in the village with my mother's parents for a while, and then eventually my grandmother got an apartment in the next block, in the next building at 100. So we often would see Aunt Rosa from time to time, and we'd go over there, and they were always, my grandmother and Aunt Rosa would talk from time to time. So they stayed together a lot. We talked a lot. But
how would you describe how would you describe your grandmother's personality? What type of woman was she?
Well, she was funny. She made you laugh. I had found I ran into one of my grammar school teachers who was on the board of the church where we attended, and my grandmother was heavily involved in this church. And he would say that, your grandmother used to keep us in stitches. She was joking. She joked a lot. I remember one time she was doing something, either combing my hair or cutting my hair, and then she started saying, ooh, what's this? And was making some kind of sound with her nail, and like there was a bug going down my shirt. Oh, bug. And then, had me jumping all around looking for a bug. So that, she was a character. my grandmother was something else. She had but she was a hard worker. One thing I can say about her, she worked really hard, and she took care of our family. You know, my father was still in the military at that time, so he was in Okinawa when we moved back to New York. So she helped take care of us with my mother and all. But I thought it was kind of interesting. She worked very hard. She was a very religious person, but she would have her scotch and water before she went to bed. And she was a very strong person too. She did a lot.
Now, how much do you know about the other siblings that were split up? Do you have any names or any information on any contact with them?
That was I didn't have any information about any other. I knew that there were many others, but the two of them were very. When you started asking them questions about their lives, they didn't really talk too much about it.
Yeah.
And they didn't talk about their family, and that bothered me because I wanted to know.
Yeah.
And most kids are real. Of course, we always ask inappropriate questions because you shouldn't be asking these things.
Yeah.
You're a kid. You don't need to know about this.
Yeah.
And let's see. I was 8 years old. So that was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
About 50 years ago, we moved from Sacramento back to New York, and that's a long time to remember all the little details.
Yeah, no, I understand.
But I can tell you one thing. I remember that building, and in fact, I don't remember New York City when I was younger. Like when I was 3 or 4, we had moved out to Long Island at that time. But when we came back, one of the things I remember about going to Aunt Rosa's house is that when we first got there used to be somebody that operated the elevator because it was the old-fashioned elevator.
Yeah.
Had that little not crank, but a hand lever. And you had to close the door. And the interesting thing, it was open kind of on like 3 sides. It was only like wire separating you from everything. You can actually see everything around you. So that was kind of one of those things that take you back in time. Before they replaced that elevator. So it would have been nice to know the rest of the family. And but. I'm sure that there are plenty of cousins.
Oh yeah.
And as now we're able to probably get more information about them. But the interesting thing was Natalie, your mother. I think the last time we were in California was at my youngest 3 siblings' baptism. Al and Natalie and Judy Simmons, and I can't remember who else was there. They came up for the baptism, it was a baptism. And we had one group, all three of them got baptized at the same time.
Oh wow.
And the next time I saw your mother, I'm not sure if she came for my grandmother's funeral, but I remember coming to your grandmother's funeral. I went to your grandmother's funeral.
Yeah. My sister went.
But I remember, it was so long ago.
Yeah, several years. Yeah, her and my sister. I remember her and my sister went to the funeral.
And it was, but the sad thing is that there was so much more that we could have been like a different type of family had we known.
That is true.
Because our family, our side of the family, my brothers, they always come to my house and at the last minute, of course. They don't say anything about that. But they visit, from time to time, and we try to stay in touch. But that's. And you've experienced that with Michael. He usually calls and talks with you. But we have a lot of family members all over. So
well, we have a lot more, and I hope that one of the things we do is track down. I don't know. I think there was 11. Well, just obviously they're probably past, but there's generations. I'm sure they all had children, and I think it'd be a nice thing to.
I think
to track
when
that
I
down.
asked about it, there were 11 alive out of 15.
Wow, it's just such an. I know it's just an interesting, even a historical story. Because for what I was told was that it was I guess there was a biracial marriage, and for some reason the mother died, and he wasn't able to keep the kids, so they just it's just an interesting story,
right?
From that standpoint, even if you separate the fact that it's your family, I mean, it just sounds like a really interesting story.
And
how they ended up staying connected, and why didn't others stay connected too? It just seems like there's just something there that's
Well, even if there were more in New York, they didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing was, my grandfather was in New York at that same time, and your mother and my father both talked about. I remember my father talking about saying he's seen this guy come to the house once, and I heard your mother say. She told me the other night that he came to the house, and I'm thinking they both might have been there at the same time. And the interesting thing was, my grandmother never talked about it. I didn't find out this information from her. I got this secondhand, and then for some reason. Well, I know she knew he was there because she gave my mother his death certificate. When my mother passed, that was one of the things she gave me also.
Oh, wow.
She's left, and I thought that was kind of interesting. So I don't know if he knew my grandmother from when they were in Petersburg or wherever they were. I don't know.
Well, since you have the birth certificate, can you just recite that information? That way I can.
I don't have the birth certificate. I don't have.
Oh, you don't?
I don't have his birth. I have his death certificate.
His death certificate. Okay.
And I don't.
Do you have the obituary?
I don't have an obituary.
Okay, because that has a lot of information about family and. Okay.
And that's one of the things I was looking at too. But being so sidetracked on so many things. Just life in general.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Looking into that, I'm finally getting to a point where I.
You have time.
I have a little bit more time.
A little bit more time.
But since I.
You said you haven't been home yet in 2 weeks. So.
Yeah, I have not been home in 2 weeks, and then since I left my job, it was just so everybody said, "Oh, you're retiring?" I said, "No, I quit my job." We were traveling for about 2 weeks after that, and we go home for 2 weeks and then gone, and then 3 weeks later we've been on this. So I have not been home very much.
Well, when you do get home, if you start to piece some things together, please let me know, because it's funny.